I'm Derek. Welcome to Intertwined Hearts. Subscribe, like, and share if you enjoy. Let's go. The sound of deep breathing beside her made Savannah Parker's heart freeze. The soft light of the Los Angeles morning filtered through the silk curtains, illuminating a room that was definitely not hers. His eyes widened as he recognized the sleeping face of Marcus Drake, his boss, CEO of Drake Advertising, lying less than an arm's length away. No. Panic took over his body as fragments of the previous night began to materialize in his mind like pieces of an unwanted puzzle. The company's end-of-year party, the champagne glasses, Marcus's devastating smile, the dance, the kiss. Savannah covered her mouth with her hands, stifling a moan of despair. At 28, his meticulously planned career had just imploded. 3 years of hard work as an administrative assistant, building an impeccable reputation, reduced to ashes by a single night of recklessness. With calculated movements, he slid off the king-sized bed, collecting his clothes scattered across the marble floor. The black dress, chosen with such care for the party, now seemed a symbol of her professional ruin. Her fingers trembled as she put on each piece, her eyes constantly looking at Marcus's sleeping figure. The penthouse apartment, with its panoramic view of downtown Los Angeles, was a testament to Marcus Drake's success. The modern, sophisticated atmosphere that had so impressed her the night before now felt suffocating. Family photos adorned one wall, Marcus with his parents at graduations, at charity events. The Drake empire was more than an advertising company. It was a dynasty. In the elevator, Savannah finally allowed the tears to flow. Her reflection in the mirror showed smudged makeup and disheveled hair, the perfect embodiment of the walk of shame. But shame was the least of his problems. How could I go back to work there? How would you view Marcus in the company corridors? How would you deal with the inevitable stares and whispers? During the taxi ride to her apartment in Silver Lake, Savannah made a decision. His hands shook as he typed the resignation email on his cell phone. He was cowardly, he knew that. But the alternative seemed impossible to bear. Dear Mr. Drake, for personal reasons, I announce my immediate resignation from the position of administrative assistant. I appreciate the opportunity and apologize for the short notice. Yours sincerely, Savannah Parker. His finger hovered over the send button for a few seconds before pressing it. A wave of nausea hit her immediately, a mix of hangover and regret. In her modest apartment, Savannah huddled under the shower, letting the hot water wash away the memories of the night before. Flashes kept coming back. Marcus's hands on her waist during the dance, the heat of his lips, the way he said her name. The phone rang incessantly throughout the day. First Rachel, her best friend and co-worker, then the company's HR. Savannah ignored all the calls, sinking into a cocoon of self-pity and Netflix. A week turned into 2, then a month. Their savings began to dwindle, and reality set in. That's when Rachel called with the news that would change everything. Marcus was in a car accident the day after the party, Rachel revealed. He had a head injury. He lost part of his memory of the days before the accident. The information hit Savannah like a punch in the gut. Fate was offering him a way out, a chance to start over as if that night had never happened. But why, instead of relief, did I feel an inexplicable emptiness? 3 months passed. Savannah managed to get back on her feet, accepting a promising position at a digital marketing agency in New York. Moving to the East Coast represented not just an escape, but a new chapter. Manhattan, with its frenetic pace and promises of anonymity, seemed like the perfect place to bury the past. It was during his second week at the new job that the first symptoms appeared: morning nausea, sensitivity to odors, extreme tiredness. The pregnancy test, purchased at a pharmacy close to work, confirmed her worst fears. That same afternoon, an internal statement fell like a bombshell. The small agency had just been acquired by a larger conglomerate. The name of the purchasing group made Savannah pale: Drake Enterprises. Sitting in her cubicle, with the positive pregnancy test still in her bag, and the acquisition announcement flashing on her screen, Savannah faced an impossible crossroads. Marcus Drake, the man who didn't remember the night they spent together, was about to become her boss again. And she carried a secret that could change their lives forever. The sound of approaching heels made her look up. Alexandra Bennett, the new integration director sent by the Drake Group, stood at her desk with a professional smile. "Miss Parker, Marcus Drake will be arriving tomorrow for a staff meeting. He made a point of getting to know each employee personally." Savannah forced a smile, feeling the world spin around her. In less than 24 hours, he would be face to face with the father of his child, a man who had no idea of the bond that united them. Fate, apparently, had a peculiar sense of humor. The general meeting was scheduled for 9 in the morning, but Savannah arrived at the office at 7, determined to prepare herself emotionally for the inevitable reunion. The new Manhattan office, with its view of Central Park, felt like a glass and steel prison that morning. Sitting at her desk, she nervously twirled a pen between her fingers as she mentally reviewed her options. Telling the truth would mean destroying not only her new life in New York, but also irreparably impacting Marcus's life. The pregnancy test in her purse weighed like lead, a constant reminder that her choices wouldn't just affect her. "You look like a ghost," Rachel commented over FaceTime, her voice thick with concern. Even from a distance, her best friend remained her safe haven. "Sav, you need to calm down. He doesn't even remember that night." "How can I calm down? I'm pregnant by my ex-boss who is now my new boss, and who has no idea we slept together," Savannah whispered furiously into the phone, checking to make sure no one was around. The buzz in the office gradually increased as other employees arrived. Alexandra Bennett, the director of integration, moved between the tables with her clipboard, organizing the order of the individual presentations that would take place after the general meeting. "Miss Parker." Alexandra stopped at her desk again. "Marcus specifically asked to speak to you first, after the meeting. Apparently your previous resume at Drake Advertising caught his attention." Savannah's blood ran cold. Of course, his name had sparked something. Even if it wasn't memories, there were certainly records of his time at the company in Los Angeles. His abrupt departure would likely raise questions. At 9 sharp, Marcus Drake entered the conference room. Savannah, sitting strategically at the back of the room, felt her heart speed up. He was even more handsome than she remembered. The impeccably tailored navy blue suit, the piercing green eyes, the charismatic smile that had been his undoing that fateful night. Throughout the presentation about the company's merger, Savannah fought nausea, a combination of morning sickness and pure nervousness. Marcus spoke confidently about vision, synergy, and the future, without making any mention of his past in Los Angeles. "And now, I would like to meet each member of this talented team individually," Marcus concluded, his eyes scanning the room, starting with Miss Parker. The journey to his private room felt like a walk to the scaffold. Alexandra left them alone, closing the door softly behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. "Savannah Parker," Marcus spoke his name as if testing him. "I admit I was intrigued when I saw your name on the employee list. You worked at Drake Advertising in Los Angeles, correct?" "Yes, for 3 years," she replied, keeping her voice as steady as possible. "And left abruptly?" There was genuine curiosity in his voice. "Unfortunately, due to the accident, my memories of that period are somewhat hazy. But your file shows an exemplary record. Why the sudden departure?" Savannah felt the baby move for the first time, a slight flutter that almost made her lose her breath. It was as if the little life inside her chose just this moment to make its presence known. "Personal matters that cannot be postponed," she managed to say, praying that her voice wouldn't shake. "A family emergency." Marcus watched her for a moment, as if trying to decipher something beyond her words. "Well, your prior experience with our corporate culture will be valuable in this transition process. I hope we can count on you for a long time to come." The irony of the situation was not lost on Savannah. In just a few months, her pregnancy would be impossible to hide. And then what? How long until someone does the math and connects the dots? Upon leaving Marcus's room, Savannah ran to the bathroom, barely able to contain her tears. His phone vibrated. A message from Rachel. How was it? Before she could respond, another nausea hit her. As she leaned over the sink, a familiar voice sounded behind her. You're pregnant, aren't you? Savannah turned to find Alexandra Bennett standing in the bathroom doorway, her shrewd eyes fixed on her. The silence that followed was his confession. And by your behavior today, I'd venture to say that Marcus is the father, Alexandra continued, her voice surprisingly gentle. And he doesn't know. As Savannah started, but Alexandra interrupted her. I'm Marcus's cousin. I was at the end-of-year party. I saw you two leaving together, she explained. The next day, when he had his accident, you were gone. I always wondered if there was a connection. Savannah slid down the wall until she sat on the floor, defeated. Please don't tell him. Alexandra crouched down beside him, offering a handkerchief. It's not my secret to tell, but Savannah, he has a right to know, and you don't have to face this alone. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Savannah barely registered the other meetings, her world reduced to the bathroom conversation and the impossible decision she needed to make. At night, in her small Brooklyn apartment, she placed her hand on her still flat stomach. What are we going to do, little one? She whispered to her baby. The answer came in the form of another soft movement, as if the child was trying to say that, regardless of their decision, they would face what was to come together. The Drake Enterprises office was buzzing with rumors about the growing closeness between Marcus Drake and his new employee. In the 2 weeks following the initial meeting, he found frequent excuses to request Savannah's presence in his office, always with questions related to the company's transition. He clearly doesn't remember anything, Rachel whispered during another of their late-night FaceTime conversations. But there's something there, Sav. It's like unconsciously he knows. Savannah set her laptop on the table in her small Brooklyn kitchen, watching her friend through the screen as she brewed her ginger tea to ease her morning sickness. I can't deal with that possibility right now, Rachel. Alexandra already knows, and that's scary enough. As if summoned by the mention of her name, a message from Alexandra popped up on Savannah's cell phone. We need to talk. Coffee tomorrow before work? Bluestone Lane. Coffee near Central Park became the chosen location for the meeting. Alexandra was already there when Savannah arrived, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee as she watched the city go by through the window. Marcus is planning a trip to Los Angeles next week. Alexandra got straight to the point as soon as Savannah sat down. He wants to review the company's old records, including his sudden departure. Savannah's blood ran cold. Why? Fragments of memory have been coming back, Alexandra explained, leaning forward. Nothing concrete about that night, but he's been dreaming about you. He mentioned it at family dinner yesterday. The revelation hit Savannah like a punch in the gut. His hand instinctively rested on his stomach, where a small bulge was beginning to form. There's more, Alexandra continued, her expression serious. The Drake family has a complicated genetic history, congenital heart problems that affected several family members. Marcus's father passed away at age 45 because of it. The implication of Alexandra's words was clear. The baby would need specialized medical monitoring from an early age. You have to tell him, Savannah. Not just for his right to know, but for the baby's sake. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and presentations. Savannah could barely concentrate, her mind reliving the conversation with Alexandra over and over again. During a lunch break, while walking through Bryant Park, her phone buzzed with a calendar notification. Her first prenatal appointment was scheduled for next week. Returning to the office, Savannah found Marcus waiting at her desk. His heart skipped a beat when he noticed the thoughtful expression on his face. Miss Parker, he began, his voice softer than usual. Would you like to have dinner with me tonight? To discuss some aspects of the merger, of course. The proposal caught Savannah off guard. Before she could formulate an excuse, he added, Please, there's something familiar about you that I can't explain, maybe through casual conversation. Okay, she heard herself saying against her better judgment. Le Bernardin, with its elegant atmosphere and soft lighting, seemed an appropriately dramatic setting for what was to come. Marcus ordered wine for himself, and, noticing Savannah's hesitation, didn't insist when she opted for water with lemon. "I've been having dreams," he confessed after the first course, his green eyes fixed on her. Fragments of memory, perhaps, music, laughter, a black dress. You. Savannah felt her heart speed up. "Marcus, why did you really leave Los Angeles, Savannah?" The question was gentle but direct. The moment of truth had arrived. Savannah placed the silverware on the plate, gathering all her courage. "Because the morning after the holiday party, I woke up in your bed." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus stared at her, his eyebrows furrowed in concentration, as if trying to force the memories back. "And there's more," she continued, her voice shaking slightly. "I'm pregnant. 3 months pregnant." Marcus paled, his hands gripping the edge of the table tightly. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely," Savannah replied, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "There was no one but you." The soft sound of ambient music filled the silence between them as Marcus processed the information. When he finally spoke, his voice was full of emotion. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? You had the accident the next day. You lost your memory of that night. I was scared, embarrassed. I thought it would be better for everyone if I just disappeared." "Better for everyone," Marcus repeated, a hint of bitterness in his voice. "Or better for you?" The question hit Savannah like a slap. She knew she deserved it, but it still hurt. "I'm going to be a father," Marcus murmured, more to himself than to her. "And I missed the first 3 months because you decided for both of us." "I'm sorry," Savannah whispered, tears now running freely down her face. Marcus stood up abruptly, throwing some bills on the table. "I need air. I need to think." Savannah watched him leave, her heart torn between the relief of finally revealing the truth and the fear of what would come next. His phone vibrated. A message from Alexandra. "How was it?" With trembling fingers, Savannah replied, "I told him everything. He needs time." As she walked back to her apartment in the cold Manhattan night, Savannah realized there was no turning back. The secret she had been carrying for months was now exposed, and the consequences of her choices finally caught up with her. All that was left was to wait and see if Marcus could forgive her, and if together, they could build something new from the ruins of their secrets. The morning after the revealing dinner brought a new dynamic to the Drake Enterprises office. Marcus didn't show up, and Alexandra discreetly informed Savannah that he had canceled all meetings for the day. The weight of the revealed truth hung in the air like a dense storm cloud about to collapse. "He's at the Drake Mansion in Hampton," Alexandra whispered during a coffee break. "It's where he always goes when he needs to think. Our grandmother lived there, and he says it helps him clear his mind." Savannah nodded silently, her hands shaking slightly as she held her cup of chamomile tea. The morning sickness was particularly bad that day, amplified by the anxiety of the moment. "Miss Parker," the voice of Jennifer, Marcus's secretary, interrupted her. "There's a delivery for you." The manila envelope contained medical documents, the Drake family's entire genetic history, including detailed reports on the hereditary heart condition. Enclosed is a handwritten note from Marcus. "First prenatal appointment, Thursday 2 p.m. Dr. Catherine Morrison, Upper East Side. I'll be there." Marcus's decision to immediately get involved with the pregnancy, despite the emotional turmoil, triggered a wave of mixed emotions in Savannah. Relief, gratitude, but also a paralyzing fear of what this would mean for their lives. During lunch, Rachel called in via video conference. "How are you dealing with all this?" "Honestly, I don't know," Savannah confessed, half-heartedly picking at her salad. "It's like I'm living in a surreal movie. Yesterday I was keeping this secret, and today, well, now I have a doctor's appointment scheduled with my son's father, who until yesterday I didn't know was going to be a father. At least he's taking responsibility," Rachel mused. Many men would have reacted much worse. The rest of the week passed in a blur of work activities and appointment preparations. On Thursday, Savannah arrived at Dr. Morrison 15 minutes before the scheduled time. To her surprise, Marcus was already there, wearing a navy blue suit that highlighted his green eyes. "I thought it best we arrived separately," he explained, his voice controlled, "to avoid speculation in the office." Dr. Morrison was a middle-aged woman with a warm smile and reassuring manner. While performing the ultrasound, she patiently explained every detail. "And here is the baby's heart," she pointed to the screen. The sound of heartbeats filled the room, strong and rhythmic. Marcus, who until then had maintained a reserved posture, let out an emotional sigh. Savannah watched him from the corner of her eye, noticing how his fingers tightened on the arm of the chair. "Given the family history," Dr. Morrison continued, "we will do more detailed cardiac monitoring in the second trimester. But for now, everything seems perfectly normal." After the appointment, an uncomfortable silence fell between them in the elevator. It was Marcus who broke it. "Have dinner with me. Not at the restaurant this time. At my place in Manhattan. We need to talk about how we're going to handle this." Marcus's Upper West Side apartment was exactly as Savannah imagined. Sleek, minimalist, with a view of Central Park. Artistic black and white photographs decorated the walls, and an imposing library occupied an entire wall. "I've spent the last few days trying to recover my memories of that night," Marcus began, pouring lemon water for both of them. "It's frustrating to have a void where there should be something so meaningful." "I'm sorry," Savannah murmured, "for running away, for not telling us sooner." "I'm not here for accusations," Marcus interrupted her softly. "What's done is done. Now we need to think about the future, about our son." The way he said "our son" made Savannah's heart skip a beat. "I want to be a part of everything," he continued. "Medical consultations, preparations, decisions. And when the pregnancy starts to become visible, we will have to deal with professional issues as well." "Do you want me to resign?" Savannah asked, tensing. "No," Marcus responded promptly. "I want you to be transferred to another department where there is no conflict of interest. And I want us to make a controlled announcement about our situation before the rumors start." The rest of the night was spent planning the next steps. Marcus insisted on arranging a more comprehensive health plan for Savannah and the baby, and they discussed how and when to tell the Drake family. "My mother will want to meet you immediately," Marcus warned. "She can be intense." When Savannah finally prepared to leave, Marcus gently stopped her by the arm. "There's something else," he said, his voice soft. "I have flashbacks. Not complete memories, but sensations. The perfume you wore that night, the sound of your laughter, the texture of your black dress. They're like loose pieces of a puzzle that I can't put together." Savannah felt her heart quicken at his proximity. For a moment, it was like they were back in that night in Los Angeles before everything got complicated. "Maybe," Marcus continued, "in time, we can build new memories to replace the ones I lost." Those words accompanied Savannah the entire trip back to Brooklyn. As she watched the city lights through the taxi window, her hand rested on her belly where her son was growing, irrevocably connecting her to the man who, even without complete memories of that night, was willing to build a future with her. The news of Savannah's pregnancy and her connection to Marcus Drake spread through Drake Enterprises like wildfire. The official announcement, carefully prepared by the Public Relations Department, did not stop the curious looks and whispers in the corridors. His transfer to the Department of Digital Strategy, although planned to minimize conflicts of interest, only served to further fuel speculation. "You needed to see Caroline from HR's face when she found out," Alexandra commented during an impromptu lunch in the break room. "She was convinced she was going to be the next Mrs. Drake." Savannah picked at her salad, trying to ignore the comment. The last few weeks had been an emotional roller coaster. Marcus, although he maintained a professional distance in the office, was surprisingly present in his personal life. Daily messages asking about your well-being, attendance at all medical appointments, and even an access card to your apartment in case of emergency. The Drake Mansion in Greenwich is being prepared for family dinner this weekend, Alexandra continued, closely watching Savannah's reaction. Victoria, Marcus's mother, is particularly looking forward to meeting you. The mere thought made Savannah's stomach turn, and it wasn't just morning sickness this time. Victoria Drake was a legendary figure in New York society, known both for her philanthropic works and her impeccable standards. Marcus said I don't need to go if I don't feel ready, Savannah murmured, but she knew it was a losing battle. Sooner or later he would have to face the Drake matriarch. That afternoon, while organizing some reports at her new desk, Savannah was struck by a memory from the holiday party. The exact moment her eyes met Marcus's across the crowded ballroom. There was something magnetic about that moment, a connection that transcended the boss-employee relationship. Thinking about me? Marcus's voice startled her. He was standing at her door, holding 2 Starbucks cups, a coffee for him and a ginger tea for her. How did you know I was here? Savannah asked, accepting the drink. Alexandra mentioned that you've been working late. It's not good for you or the baby. Her voice carried genuine concern. Also, I wanted to confirm about the dinner in Greenwich. Savannah sighed, giving in to the inevitable. I'll be there. Marcus's smile lit up his face. Great. I'll pick you up at 6 on Saturday. The Drake Mansion in Greenwich was a stunning 19th-century Georgian estate with meticulously maintained gardens and a commanding view of Long Island Sound. When Marcus's Aston Martin drove through the wrought iron gates, Savannah felt her heart quicken. Breathe, Marcus whispered, placing a comforting hand over hers. My mother may seem intimidating, but she has a good heart. Victoria Drake was waiting for them in the entrance hall, an elegant woman in her 60s, with perfectly styled gray hair and the same piercing green eyes as Marcus. His appraising gaze swept Savannah from head to toe before breaking into a surprisingly warm smile. So you are the young woman who captured my son so completely that he didn't even need memories to fall in love again, Victoria declared, pulling Savannah into an unexpected hug. Dinner passed in a surprisingly pleasant atmosphere. Victoria shared stories from Marcus's childhood, including his first TV commercial at age 5 for the family business. Alexandra, present with her husband James, kept the conversation flowing with her characteristic humor. It was during dessert that Victoria asked for a moment alone with Savannah in the conservatory. The young woman's heart skipped a beat when she found herself alone with the Drake matriarch. You know, darling, Victoria began, adjusting an orchid in its crystal vase. When Marcus had his accident, my greatest fear was that he would never be the same again. Not just because of the lost memories, but because of the light in his eyes. She paused, turning to face Savannah. But ever since you reappeared in his life, even before he knew about the baby, that light has returned. Some connections transcend memory. I don't know what to say, Savannah admitted emotionally. Don't say anything. Just promise to be patient with him. Marcus is trying to win back not only you, but also the memories he lost. As they drove back to Manhattan that night, the silence in the car was comfortable. Marcus drove with one hand on the steering wheel, the other resting protectively over Savannah's. My mother adored you, he commented with a smile. She's already planning the baby's room at the mansion. Your family is amazing, Savannah replied sincerely. So different from what I imagined. Marcus stopped at a red light, turning to look at her. You know, sometimes I have such vivid flashes of that night. Your smile under the Christmas lights, the way your dress sparkled when we danced. Marcus, Savannah started, but he continued. It doesn't matter if we never fully recover those memories. We're creating new ones now, and those are the ones that really matter. The light changed, but for a moment they stood there, lost in each other's eyes, while the city pulsed around them. It was as if fate was giving them a second chance, not just to fix the past, but to build a future together, word by word, moment by moment. The buzz at Drake Enterprises reached its peak when Savannah's belly began to become more visible, At the beginning of the 5th month of pregnancy, the curious looks and whispers in the hallways intensified, especially after the publication of a photo of her and Marcus leaving a doctor's appointment together on the Upper East Side. "Page 6 of the New York Post," Alexandra commented, sliding the tablet across the table during breakfast in a low-key bistro in Chelsea. "The Drake Empire will have an heir out of wedlock. The tabloids are ecstatic." Savannah felt her stomach drop, and it wasn't because of the pregnancy. Public exposure was something I was still learning to deal with. Marcus, on the other hand, seemed unfazed by the media attention. "Ignore them," he had said the night before, during an impromptu dinner at his apartment. "They've always made up stories about my family. In a few weeks, they'll find something else." But it wasn't just the media that caused anxiety in Savannah. Marcus's memories began to return in increasingly frequent fragments, like pieces of a puzzle slowly falling into place. "I remembered your perfume," he revealed during a walk in Central Park that afternoon. "Jasmine and vanilla. You wore the same to the holiday party." Savannah froze momentarily. It was disconcerting how such intimate details of that night began to emerge in his consciousness. "And I remember your laugh," he continued, his green eyes fixed on her with intensity. "When we danced to All of Me by John Legend, you said it was too cliché for a corporate party." Savannah's heart quickened. That song had been the turning point of the night, when the tension between them finally boiled over. "Marcus," she began, unsure of how to proceed. "Maybe we should focus on the present, on the baby." "That's what I've been doing," he interrupted her softly. "But I can't ignore that every memory I recover makes me better understand why I've been so inexplicably attracted to you ever since we met again in New York." The conversation was interrupted by Marcus's phone. An emergency at the company required his immediate presence. As she watched him walk away, Savannah felt a stronger movement from the baby, as if the little life inside her wanted to participate in this moment. Back at work, Savannah found an envelope on her desk. Inside was a 4D ultrasound of the baby, taken at the last appointment, with a handwritten note from Marcus. "He has your nose. Dinner today? We need to discuss some plans." Some plans turned out to be a surprising proposal. At the River Cafe restaurant with the Brooklyn Bridge lit up in the background, Marcus presented his idea. "I want you to move into my apartment," he said bluntly. "The building has 24-hour security, is close to the best hospitals, and we can transform the office into a room for the baby." Savannah almost choked on her berry mocktail. "Marcus, this is complicated." "It's practical," he argued. "You're already in the 5th month. Your apartment in Brooklyn is a 4th floor without an elevator, and with the paparazzi—" "It's not just practicality," she interrupted. "We don't even know what we are to each other. Yes, we're going to have a child together, but you still don't trust me," he added, his voice soft but hurt, "because I don't fully remember that night." The silence that followed was heavy. Outside, the city lights twinkled like stars fallen into the Hudson River. "It's not that," Savannah finally said. "I'm afraid of mixing things up, of confusing responsibility with something else." Marcus leaned across the table, taking your hands in his. "What if it's not confusion? What if it's fate giving us a second chance to make things right this time?" Before Savannah could respond, her phone vibrated. It was Rachel, calling from Los Angeles. "Sav, you need to see this." Rachel's voice was strained. "I just found the video of the holiday party on the company's old server. That night, it's all recorded." The world seemed to stop for a moment. Marcus, noticing her sudden paleness, squeezed her hands gently. "What it was?" Savannah looked at him, her heart beating wildly. "Rachel found a video of the party, of our night." Marcus's eyes widened slightly, a mix of surprise and something else. Hope, perhaps. "Maybe," he said after a moment's reflection. "It's time to face this together, to fill in the gaps and find out if what we're building now is stronger than what we've lost." The decision to watch the video together was made in mutual silence. That night could change everything, or confirm what they both were already beginning to suspect. that some stories deserve a fresh start, even if the first chapter has been lost in the mists of memory. Marcus's apartment, with its panoramic view of Manhattan, felt strangely intimate that night. Savannah sat stiffly on the Italian leather sofa while Rachel, using her laptop, prepared to share the video from the holiday party. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Rachel asked, her voice conveying concern even over the digital connection. "Some memories are perhaps best left in the past." Marcus, sitting next to Savannah but keeping a respectful distance, replied firmly, "We need to know." The video started playing. The slightly grainy images showed the ballroom of the Millennium Hotel in Los Angeles, decorated with golden lights and elaborate arrangements. The camera, strategically positioned to capture the entire corporate party, showed employees dancing, talking, celebrating. And then, there they were. Savannah caught her breath when she saw herself in the video, wearing that black dress that she still kept in the back of her closet. Marcus, impeccable in his dark suit, approached her on the dance floor just as All of Me began to play. "You were right," Marcus murmured, his eyes fixed on the screen. It was really cliché for a corporate party. In the video, they danced with an intimacy that transcended their professional relationship. The chemistry between them was palpable even through the pixelated images. The camera captured the exact moment their eyes met, their initial hesitation, and then, "Pause," Savannah asked abruptly, her hand instinctively resting on her stomach. The baby was especially agitated, as if he sensed the tension in the room. Rachel obeyed immediately. "Are you guys okay?" Marcus stood up, walking to the window. The city shone outside, oblivious to the drama unfolding in the apartment. "I remember that," he said softly. "Not as a complete memory, but as a feeling. The way your body fit perfectly against mine as we danced." Savannah felt her cheeks burn. "Marcus, no, please let me finish." He turned to face her. "Ever since you reappeared in New York, I've been struggling to understand this inexplicable connection I feel. Watching this video, seeing what we were like that night, it all makes sense now." Rachel cleared her throat through her laptop. "I think you guys need your privacy. I'm going to turn it off, but the video is available if you want to continue watching it later." After the screen went black, a heavy silence filled the room. It was Savannah who broke it first. "That night wasn't a mistake," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I ran away not because I regretted it, but because I was afraid. Afraid of what it meant, afraid of the consequences, afraid of admitting that my feelings for you went far beyond professional admiration." Marcus sat down next to her again, this time closer. "What now? What are you afraid of?" "Of everything," she answered honestly. "Of not being enough for the Drake world, of mixing emotions with responsibilities, of creating expectations that could hurt us even more." "Savannah." Marcus took her hands in his. "Ever since the accident, I've lived with this emptiness, this constant feeling that something important was missing. It wasn't just lost memories, it was you. And now, seeing that video, I understand why." The baby kicked again, as if wanting to participate in the conversation. Marcus, noticing the movement beneath their joined hands, smiled. "He's always more agitated when you're around," Savannah observed. "He knows who his father is," Marcus replied, his voice cracking with emotion. "Just like I always knew, even without memories, that you were special." At that moment, something changed between them. Maybe it was the shared vulnerability, or the visual confirmation of her story through the video, but the walls Savannah had put up were beginning to crumble. "About your proposal," she began hesitantly, "to move me here." "It's still standing," Marcus added quickly. "No pressure, no expectations beyond what you're comfortable setting. Just two expectant parents trying to do the best for their child." "And for ourselves?" Savannah asked, finally allowing herself to voice the question that had been floating between them for weeks. Marcus smiled, that smile that had been his undoing that night in Los Angeles. "One step at a time. We can start by watching the rest of the video if you want. Or we can create new memories, this time together and mindful of each moment. Savannah's phone vibrated. A message from Alexandra. How was it? Are you guys okay? Looking at Marcus, at his hands still clasped over her belly where her son was growing, Savannah knew exactly how to respond. We're starting to make out. Because sometimes, she realized, fate has a peculiar way of righting its own wrongs. And maybe, just maybe, some stories need to be rewritten to find their true ending. Savannah's move into Marcus's apartment happened gradually, like a cautious dance between two partners relearning the steps. First, it was some essential clothing, then her favorite books, and finally, one Sunday morning, the last boxes from her Brooklyn apartment were transported to the Upper West Side. I can't believe you collect 80s vinyl, Marcus commented, unpacking a particularly heavy box. His eyes lit up when he found an original Journey album. My mother has the same edition. Heirlooms from my father, Savannah explained, organizing her prenatal vitamins on the kitchen counter. He was a DJ in Seattle before. His voice cracked slightly. Marcus knew that her father had passed away when she was 16, but it was the first time he had willingly heard her talk about him. He would have loved this apartment, she continued, looking out the picture window. The view, the perfect acoustics for music. The moment was interrupted by a knock on the door. Alexandra entered carrying several samples of wallpaper and fabrics. The baby's room isn't going to decorate itself, she announced, spreading the supplies out on the dining table. And Mom insists that we use the designer who did all the Drake children's rooms. Savannah felt a pang of anxiety. Since agreeing to move, the Drake family's expectations have seemed to grow exponentially. Victoria called daily with suggestions for the baby shower, traditional family names, and plans for her grandson's future. Marcus, sensing her discomfort, intervened softly. Alex, can we look at this later? We're still sorting out the basics. Actually, Savannah took a deep breath. I think we need to have a conversation about expectations and boundaries. Alexandra got the hint immediately. I'll let you talk, but don't forget that Sunday dinner at the mansion is mandatory. Mom is planning the official pregnancy announcement to the press. After Alexandra left, a heavy silence settled over the apartment. Marcus approached Savannah, who was standing at the window, looking out over Central Park below. It's getting to be too much, isn't it? He asked gently. It's not that I don't appreciate everything your family is doing, Savannah began, choosing her words carefully. But sometimes I feel like I'm being absorbed by a tsunami called the Drake family, the baby's room, the official announcement, the family traditions. You're right, Marcus sighed, running a hand through his hair in a gesture that Savannah was beginning to recognize as a sign of nervousness. They can be a little intense, but that's because they care. I know, she turned to face him, but this baby isn't just a Drake. He's also a Parker, and I want him to know that part of his heritage too. Marcus watched her for a moment, as if an idea had just come to him. Tell me about your father. What was he like? The question took Savannah by surprise. For the past few weeks, all the talk had revolved around the Drakes, their traditions and expectations. He was free. She smiled at the memory. He played in clubs at night and taught music during the day. Our Sundays were sacred. He would put on a different vinyl every week and teach me about the history behind the music. That's why you kept the collection, Marcus concluded softly. Yes. And I hope I can do the same with our son. Marcus moved closer, his hand naturally finding the place on Savannah's belly where his growing child was growing. So let's do this. We can have a baby's room that reflects both sides of her heritage. Vintage vinyls next to the traditional Drake crib. Your mother is going to have a fit, Savannah laughed, but there was relief in her voice. Let me deal with my mother. Marcus smiled. The important thing is that our son knows all his roots. The Drakes with their business empire and the Parkers with their passion for music. At that moment, as if approving the decision, the baby gave a particularly strong kick. Marcus laughed, still marveling at each movement. I think someone is already choosing their first instrument, he joked. The rest of the afternoon was dedicated to a new type of organization. Instead of strictly following the Drake's designer's plan, they began creating their own space. The Journey vinyl took pride of place on the shelf in the baby's room, next to a black and white photo of Savannah's father at his last concert. When Victoria called later to discuss the details of the official announcement, it was Marcus who answered and gently but firmly established the new parameters. Mom, let's do this our way, Savannah heard him say. Yes, respecting Drake traditions, but also creating our own. That night, lying in her new bed, Savannah realized that perhaps she had found the balance she had been searching for. There was no need to choose between worlds. It was possible to create a new one, which included both the Drakes' formal dinners and Sunday afternoons filled with old vinyl. Marcus entered the room carrying 2 cups of chamomile tea. I thought you might want this before bed. Thank you, she smiled, accepting the cup. For everything. He sat on the edge of the bed, his gaze soft and contemplative. You know, the more time we spend together, the more old memories seem to come back. Not just from the night of the party, but from little moments in the office, glances exchanged in meetings. And is that good? Savannah asked, a hint of vulnerability in her voice. It's perfect, he replied, because every old memory I retrieve makes me even more certain that we're on the right path now. The official announcement of Savannah's pregnancy in the media generated exactly the frenzy that Victoria Drake was hoping for. Headlines in New York's major tabloids highlighted the story of the powerful heir to the Drake empire and his former administrative assistant, speculating on the details of their relationship and the future of their baby. Page 6, New York Post, even the Wall Street Journal. Alexandra listed over breakfast in her apartment, spreading the newspapers out on the kitchen table. Mom must be ecstatic about all this coverage. Savannah barely touched her fruit smoothie, her stomach churning not only from the usual pregnancy sickness, but from the public exposure that now dominated her life. Marcus, noticing her discomfort, discreetly moved the newspapers away. This will pass, he assured, his hand finding hers on the table. In a few weeks, they'll find another subject to obsess over. But it wasn't just the media that caused anxiety in Savannah. Drake Enterprises' HR department had suggested his transfer to an executive position in the digital marketing division, a promotion that many would see as favoritism due to his personal situation. You've earned this position on your own merit, Marcus insisted when she expressed her concerns during a stroll through Central Park that afternoon. His projects in Los Angeles were brilliant. They always have been. It's hard not to think people will question it, Savannah replied, adjusting her light coat over her increasingly prominent belly. Autumn in New York was beginning to show its colors, and golden leaves danced around you. The conversation was interrupted by an unexpected call. Rachel from Los Angeles with surprising news. Remember that digital campaign you developed before you left? The pilot project for the sustainable technology startup? Rachel's voice brimmed with excitement. They just closed $1 million contract and they are crediting their initial success to their marketing strategy. The news hit Savannah like a wave of validation. That project had been his last significant contribution before the fateful holiday party, a work of which he was deeply proud. Marcus, who had heard part of the conversation, smiled with satisfaction. See, your talent has always spoken for itself. That night, during dinner at home, Marcus surprised Savannah with an unexpected proposal. I want you to lead the new digital innovation division, he announced, pouring lemon water into their glasses. Not as not just as the mother of my child, but as the brilliant professional that you are. Marcus, Savannah began, but he gently interrupted her. Before you protest, the decision has already been approved by the council, unanimously. They've seen your results, Savannah. This has nothing to do with our personal situation. The baby chose that moment to give a particularly strong kick, as if he wanted to participate in the argument. Savannah laughed, placing her hand on her stomach. I guess someone has an opinion on the matter, she joked, but her eyes were watery with emotion. It was at that moment that Marcus stood up abruptly, going to his office and returning with an old box. I found this yesterday while looking for some documents, he explained, carefully opening the box. Inside were old Drake advertising photos, including one in particular that captured both of their attention. It was a photo from last year's Christmas party, a few days before the end of the year party. In it, Savannah was presenting her digital pitch to a group of executives, her face lighting up with enthusiasm. Marcus was among the audience, and the photo had captured the exact moment he watched her with a mixture of admiration and something else. "It's strange," he murmured, his fingers lightly tracing the image. "Looking at this photo now, I can feel exactly what I was thinking at that moment. How impressed I was not only by his presentation, but by his passion, his dedication." Savannah felt her heart speed up. It was the first time Marcus had spoken so openly about his feelings before the accident. "I think I was in love with you long before that party," he continued, his voice soft. "The accident may have erased some memories, but it didn't change how I feel. Maybe it just gave me the chance to fall in love with you twice." The words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning. Savannah felt the tears she had been holding back finally spill over. "Me too," she whispered. "It's always been you, Marcus. Even when I tried to run away, even when I tried to rebuild my life somewhere else, I always came back to you." The moment was interrupted by the sound of the doorbell. Alexandra, arriving for another planning session for the baby's room. But something had changed. An invisible barrier had been torn down, and the future, once so uncertain, was beginning to take on a clearer shape. "I'll take the job," Savannah decided later as they organized the last few photos back into the box. "But on one condition." "Which?" Marcus asked, a smile playing on his lips. "May you promise to always see me like this, as the professional I am, not just as the mother of your child." "I promise," he replied, sealing the commitment with a soft kiss on her forehead. "Although I must warn you that seeing you pregnant with my child only makes me admire you even more." The progression of the pregnancy brought not only physical changes to Savannah, but also a new dynamic in her relationship with Marcus. Now, in her 7th month, she was adjusting to her role as Director of Digital Innovation at Drake Enterprises, balancing executive meetings with doctor appointments and preparations for her baby's arrival. "The third quarter numbers are impressive," Marcus commented during a board meeting, his professional pride blending with his personal pride as Savannah presented her team's results. "The new digital approach has increased our market penetration by 45%. Later, in the private elevator, away from corporate eyes, he couldn't resist touching his prominent belly. "Is our little marketing genius already influencing your strategies?" "Actually," Savannah smiled, "he seems to prefer creative meetings. He gets especially agitated during brainstorming sessions." The growing intimacy between them was something that still surprised them. Sharing the same space had created a comfortable routine. Cooked breakfasts together, evenings watching documentaries on the couch, long conversations about the future. It was during one of these quiet moments that Alexandra came up with an intriguing discovery. "I found this in the old files," she announced, handing Marcus a yellowed envelope. Inside was a letter of recommendation he had written to Savannah, dated a week before the holiday party. Marcus read aloud, "Savannah Parker is not only an exceptionally talented professional, but she has a unique vision that will transform the future of digital marketing. I commend her promotion not only for her technical competence, but for her innate ability to lead and innovate." "Did you plan to promote me?" Savannah asked, surprised. "Apparently," Marcus replied, his eyes fixed on the paper. "It's strange. Reading this now, I can feel exactly what I was thinking when I wrote it. How I admired your dedication, your creativity." Alexandra watched the scene with a knowing smile. "You two always had this chemistry, you know," everyone in the office commented, The revelation triggered a series of memories in Savannah, little moments she had saved. Marcus bringing her coffee on her late work nights, his insightful suggestions during her presentations, the way her eyes met in crowded meetings. "That's why I ran away," she admitted softly, when Alexandra left them alone. "It wasn't just because of what happened at the party. It was because of what I was already feeling, long before that night." Marcus moved closer, his fingers gently tracing the contour of her face. "What now? Do you still want to run away?" "No," she replied without hesitation. "Now I want to build something real, something of our own." The moment was interrupted by a strong movement from the baby. Marcus laughed, placing his hand on Savannah's stomach. "I think he agrees." The following week, during a routine appointment, Dr. Morrison shared troubling news. "The baby is a little smaller than expected at this stage. Given the Drake family's cardiac history, I would like to run some additional tests." The anxiety of those days of waiting brought Savannah and Marcus even closer together. He canceled all his meetings to accompany her to each appointment, his constant presence a silent reminder that she was no longer alone. "You know what scares me the most?" Savannah confessed one night, cuddled in Marcus's arms as they awaited the results. "It's not just worrying about the baby. It's realizing how important you've become to me, how much I have to lose now." Marcus pulled her closer, his heart pounding against her back. "You're not going to lose me, Savannah, or the baby. We're going to get through this together." The test results brought partial relief. The baby was healthy, but would need constant monitoring throughout the rest of the pregnancy. The news, although worrying, served to further solidify the bond between them. "Maybe," Marcus suggested as they organized the baby's room that weekend, "we should make things official." Savannah stopped folding the tiny onesies, her heart racing. "What do you mean?" "Marry," he replied simply, "not because of convention or family pressure, but because I want to wake up every day next to you, raise our son together, build a life that is truly ours." The proposal, made between newly arrived diapers and yet-to-be-assembled mobiles, was perfectly imperfect, exactly like their love story. "Yes," Savannah replied, happy tears streaming down her face, "but on one condition." "Which?" Marcus asked, a smile playing on his lips. "Let it be something small, intimate. Just us, close family, and maybe some old vinyl playing in the background." Marcus pulled her into a soft kiss, his hands resting protectively on her growing baby bump. "Perfect, just like you." News of Marcus Drake and Savannah Parker's impending wedding spread through Drake Enterprises like wildfire, generating a mix of reactions that ranged from genuine joy to barely concealed whispers in the hallways. Victoria Drake, surprisingly, was the first to advocate the idea of an intimate ceremony. "You already have enough media exposure," she declared during a lunch at her private club on the Upper East Side. "Plus, the Drakes have always valued substance over spectacle." Savannah, now at the beginning of her 8th month of pregnancy, felt increasingly comfortable with her new reality. The engagement ring, a delicate vintage solitaire that had belonged to Marcus's grandmother, glittered on her hand as she finalized the final details of the ceremony. "Rachel will be arriving from Los Angeles tomorrow," she informed Marcus over dinner. "She insists on organizing a small baby shower before the wedding." Marcus smiled, watching as Savannah unconsciously stroked her belly as she spoke. It was a habit he had noticed intensifying over the last few weeks, especially when she was anxious or thoughtful. "I had another flashback today," he revealed softly. "About the end-of-year party." Savannah froze, her dessert spoon stopping in midair. Since watching part of the video, Marcus's memories had been returning with more frequency and intensity. "It was about our dancing," he continued. "You said something about how the best stories start when we least expect it. Ironic, considering everything that happened afterwards." "I remember that," Savannah whispered. "That's when you pulled me closer and I whispered that some stories are worth the risk," Marcus added, his eyes meeting hers across the table. Funny how I was right, even though I didn't know what would come next. The moment was interrupted by the sound of the doorbell. Alexandra entered carrying several sample invitations and a worried expression. "The paparazzi found out about the wedding," she announced without preamble. "They're speculating about a grand ceremony at the plaza." Marcus laughed, taking Savannah's hand across the table. "Little do they know that we have something completely different planned." The ceremony would be held in the garden of the Drakes' Hampton mansion, with only 50 guests nearby. Instead of a traditional orchestra, there would be a DJ specializing in old vinyl, a tribute to Savannah's father that Alexandra had secretly arranged. Speaking of surprises, Alexandra smiled, handing Savannah an envelope. "I found this in the old archives of the studio where your father used to play in Seattle." Inside the envelope was an unreleased recording, a jazz session that Savannah's father had recorded weeks before he passed away. The tears began to fall before she could even fully process the meaning of that gift. "I thought we could use it as our first dance," Marcus suggested softly. "A way to have your father present in our day." That night, lying in the king-sized bed they now shared, Savannah and Marcus listened to the recording. The soft sound of the saxophone filled the room, bringing back memories and emotions that words could not express. "He would have liked you," Savannah murmured, her head resting on Marcus's chest. "The way you respect my memories of him, the way you value this part of my story." "It's because I finally understand something," Marcus replied, his fingers tracing soft patterns on your back. "Our stories, all of them, the moments I remember, the ones I've forgotten, and the ones we've yet to create, are part of who we are. I can't get back all the memories of that night in Los Angeles, but I can create new, even more meaningful memories with you." The baby chose that moment to give a particularly strong kick, making them both laugh. "I think he agrees." Savannah smiled, guiding Marcus's hand to feel the movements. "Or her," Marcus corrected gently. They had decided not to find out the baby's sex, preferring to keep this last surprise. The following days were a whirlwind of final preparations. Rachel arrived from Los Angeles bringing with her not only baby shower ideas but also a box of memories she had saved from Savannah's time working at Drake Advertising. "I found all these pictures of you two," she explained, spreading the images out on the coffee table. "Look how this chemistry already existed, even before you realized it." The photographs told a silent story. Looks exchanged at meetings, smiles shared at corporate events, small moments that, seen now, seemed to foreshadow everything that was to come. "Sometimes I think the accident was a reset of sorts," Marcus reflected, noting a particular photo where he looked at Savannah during a performance. "Like the universe is giving us a second chance to do things right this time." Savannah intertwined her fingers with his, feeling the comforting weight of her engagement ring. "Maybe some stories need to be rewritten to find their true ending." "It's not an ending," Marcus corrected, gently kissing her forehead. "It's just the beginning of a new chapter." The week leading up to the wedding brought a series of intense emotions for Savannah and Marcus. The baby shower organized by Rachel turned into an intimate celebration in the Drake Mansion's winter garden, where family traditions blended harmoniously with the couple's personal elements. "I found this in the Seattle Times archives," Rachel announced, handing Savannah a framed article about her father. The article, dated 1995, highlighted a memorable performance at the historic Jazz Alley, with a photo of him smiling for the camera, saxophone in hand. "I thought it could be part of the baby's room decor." The tears that Savannah had been controlling throughout her pregnancy flowed freely. Marcus, who was talking to Alexandra about the final details of the wedding, immediately noticed her emotion and approached her, wrapping her protectively around her. "It's perfect," he murmured, studying the photo. "Our son must know all aspects of his heritage." Victoria Drake, who was watching the scene with interest, surprised everyone by saying, "Maybe we can organize a music room at the Hampton Mansion, a space dedicated to both vinyl and musical instruments." The suggestion, coming from the matriarch who everyone expected to be the most traditional, demonstrated an acceptance that deeply touched Savannah. It was as if the universe was conspiring to seamlessly intertwine the different aspects of their lives. During the evening, as the guests dispersed, Marcus found Savannah in the library, gazing out at the city through the French windows. "More memories came back today," he revealed, his voice soft in the silence of the room. "I remembered the exact moment I realized I was in love with you." Savannah turned to face him, her heart racing. "When?" "It was during a presentation to the board, 3 months before the party. You were advocating an innovative digital strategy, and someone on the board questioned your expertise." Marcus smiled at the memory. "The way you defended your project, with so much passion and competence. At that moment, I knew I was lost." The baby chose that moment to manifest itself with vigorous movements, making Savannah laugh through tears. "I think someone is eager to hear more of this story." The proximity of the wedding also brought unexpected challenges. The media, frustrated with the lack of information about the ceremony, began to speculate about possible problems in the relationship. One particularly nasty article insinuated that the marriage was just a facade to legitimize the baby. "Ignore them," Alexandra advised during a last-minute office meeting. "What matters is what you are building together." Marcus, however, surprised everyone with his response to the situation. At a press conference about Drake Enterprises' quarterly results, he made an unscheduled statement. "Yes, Savannah Parker and I are getting married," he declared firmly. "Not because of social convention or family pressure, but because we found in each other something rare and precious, a second chance to do things the right way. Our story may be unconventional, but it is genuine in every detail." Marcus's public statement, broadcast live on major business channels, caused a stir on social media. Positive hashtags about the couple began to emerge, and even their staunchest critics seemed to slow down their stances. On the eve of the wedding, during the rehearsal in the garden of the Hampton mansion, a special surprise awaited Savannah. Alexandra had located and restored an old record player that had belonged to her father, integrating it perfectly into the ceremony decor. "So his music can play on his special day," Alexandra explained, thrilled to see Savannah's reaction. That night, against all tradition, Marcus and Savannah decided to stay together in their apartment in Manhattan. Lying in bed, with the city shining outside, they listened to her father's newly discovered recording. "Do you know what I love most about you?" Marcus asked, his fingers tracing soft patterns on Savannah's arm. "How you maintain your essence even in the midst of all the changes. How you transform each challenge into an opportunity for growth." "I learned that from you," she replied softly. "Seeing how you dealt with the loss of your memories, how you turned that experience into something positive. It taught me a lot about resilience and true love." The baby moved between them, as if wanting to participate in the moment. Marcus placed his hand on Savannah's belly, marveling at his son's movements. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "we officially start our own story. No pressure, no outside expectations. Just us, building something true." "And with a personalized soundtrack," Savannah added with a smile, referring to her father's song that would accompany their first dance as a couple. The night progressed peacefully, dotted with soft conversations and moments of contemplative silence. It was as if the universe was conspiring to create the perfect atmosphere for the day before her big day. The morning of the wedding dawned with a peculiar softness in Hampton, as if nature itself conspired to create the perfect setting. Savannah woke up to the distant sound of waves and the aroma of coffee Marcus was brewing in the kitchen, a routine they had established over the past few weeks. "Shouldn't it be somewhere else?" she joked, walking into the kitchen still in her silk robe. "Something about not seeing the bride before the wedding?" Marcus smiled, handing him a cup of ginger tea. "I think we've broken every traditional rule possible. Why stop now?" The moment was interrupted by the simultaneous arrival of Rachel and Alexandra, loaded with bags and emanating a frenetic energy typical of their wedding day. "You two, separate now," Alexandra commanded, pushing Marcus towards the door. We only have 4 hours to transform Savannah into the most stunning bride Hampton has ever seen. The dress, a flowing ivory-hued number that gracefully accommodated her 8-month-old baby bump, hung like a work of art in the master bedroom. Victoria had insisted on calling in a renowned designer to create something exclusive, but Savannah opted for a simpler design from a local boutique in Brooklyn. "Something old," Rachel announced, pinning a delicate pearl hairpin that had belonged to her mother into Savannah's hair. "Something new," he continued, revealing a pair of silver flats, a concession to the comfort necessary in his condition. "Something borrowed," Alexandra added, offering a delicate sapphire bracelet that was a Drake family heirloom. "And something blue," he concluded, showing a small blue ribbon discreetly sewn onto the hem of the dress. As her friends worked on her transformation, Savannah reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From anxious mornings in Los Angeles to lonely nights in Brooklyn, every moment had contributed to this day. "I have something for you." Victoria appeared in the room, carrying an antique velvet box. Inside rested a diamond choker that made all the women gasp. "It was my grandmother's. She also got married pregnant, you know. It caused a scandal at the time, but it was one of the happiest marriages I've ever known." The revelation surprised Savannah, who had always imagined the Drake family as a bastion of impeccable traditions. Victoria, noticing his astonishment, smiled softly. "The Drakes have always been known more for following their hearts than social conventions. Marcus is just keeping up the family tradition." In the garden, the ceremony took place exactly as they had planned. The vintage record player held a place of honor near the makeshift altar, ready to play Savannah's father's music at the appropriate moment. Marcus waited at the altar, his navy blue suit contrasting perfectly with the natural setting of the garden. When Savannah emerged, led by an emotional maternal uncle, time seemed to pause. A recording of smooth jazz filled the air, the notes of her father's saxophone dancing with the sea breeze. Savannah felt her son move, as if he also recognized the music. "You look absolutely stunning," Marcus whispered as she arrived at the altar, his eyes shining with suppressed emotion. The vows were exchanged with touching simplicity. Marcus spoke about second chances and reconstructed memories, about love that transcends time and circumstances. Savannah, for her part, talked about destiny and courage, about finding home in each other's arms. "I loved you twice," Marcus declared, his voice breaking. "First, in memories that time tried to erase, and then, rediscovering every detail that made me fall in love with you again." The intimate reception that followed was a perfect reflection of the couple, elegant without being ostentatious, traditional but with unique touches that spoke to their individual stories. The mansion's library had been transformed into a dance floor, where old vinyls mixed with contemporary music. "Look," Alexandra caught Savannah's attention during the party, pointing to a corner of the library where Marcus was chatting animatedly with Rachel. "He's asking her for all the stories about you in Los Angeles. He wants to fill in every gap he can." The night progressed like a well-orchestrated dream, each moment perfectly aligned with the next. As the last guests said their goodbyes, Marcus led Savannah to the conservatory, where one last surprise awaited. "I found this in the old things in the office," he revealed, showing a notebook. "These are my thoughts about you, written before the accident. I want us to read it together, not to mourn what was lost, but to celebrate what we found along the way." Under the soft light of the Hampton stars, with their sun moving between them like a promise of the future, Savannah and Marcus began to read, not just words on paper, but the beginning of their new story, written by 4 hands and 2 perfectly synchronized hearts. The soft light of dawn filtered through the curtains of the master bedroom at the Hampton mansion when Savannah felt the first contractions. She was alone. Marcus had gone for a morning run on the beach, a habit she had maintained religiously since they moved into the house after their wedding 3 weeks ago. "Not yet, little one," she murmured, rubbing her belly. It was 2 weeks before his due date, but his son apparently had other plans. The phone rang, Alexandra with her characteristic sixth sense for important moments. How are you feeling today? I think he's decided he wants to attend today's board meeting, Savannah tried to joke, but her voice shook slightly as another contraction hit her. Don't move, Alexandra ordered. I'm calling Marcus and Dr. Morrison. When Marcus returned, he found Savannah sitting on the edge of the bed, breathing deeply through yet another contraction. The panic in his green eyes was quickly replaced by determination. Dr. Morrison is waiting for us at New York Presbyterian, he informed her, helping her to her feet. Alexandra is already on her way with the suitcase we prepared. On the drive to Manhattan, Savannah watched the landscape pass by as Marcus drove with a calm that she knew was only superficial. His hands gripped the steering wheel hard enough to turn his knuckles white. Do you remember the first time we went this way? She asked, trying to distract him. When did you bring me to meet your mother? Marcus smiled, relaxing slightly. How could I forget? You were so nervous that you recited every digital campaign the company has had for the last 5 years. The memory was interrupted by a stronger contraction. Savannah grabbed Marcus's hand, who had instinctively reached out to her. At the hospital, they found not only Alexandra and Dr. Morrison, but also Victoria, Rachel, who had taken the first flight from Los Angeles upon receiving the news, and a full team of neonatal cardiology specialists, a precaution given the Drakes' family history. Your baby picked a great time, Dr. Morrison commented as she examined Savannah. Dr. Carter, our best specialist in pediatric cardiology, was just visiting the hospital today. The next few hours were a mix of pain, anticipation, and moments of crystal clarity. Marcus didn't leave Savannah's side for a second, whispering words of encouragement and love even as she squeezed his hand hard enough to leave marks. Remember what you told me at our wedding? He murmured during a pause between contractions. About finding home in each other's arms? Well, our home is about to get bigger. At 3:47 p.m. that afternoon, amidst tears of joy and exhaustion, James Parker Drake was born, a healthy boy with Marcus's green eyes, and, as Victoria immediately noticed, Savannah's same determined chin. His heart is perfect, Dr. Carter announced after the first scans, eliciting collective sighs of relief. Strong and rhythmic, exactly as it should be. Later, when the initial commotion had subsided and the visitors had left, Marcus and Savannah finally had a moment alone with their son. Little James slept peacefully in the crib next to the hospital bed, his small hands occasionally moving as if conducting music only he could hear. He has the soul of a musician, Marcus smiled, delicately adjusting the blue hat that covered the baby's head. Like your grandfather. And the Drake's entrepreneurial spirit, Savannah added, watching as the baby clung tightly to Marcus's finger even in his sleep. Alexandra returned briefly to deliver a gift, a small flash drive containing all the photos and videos she had collected over the months, documenting the couple's journey from their reunion in New York to this moment. For when he's older, she explained, so you can understand the extraordinary story of how your parents fell in love twice. That night, as James rested in Savannah's arms and Marcus watched them with teary eyes, they talked about the future, about the music room that was being prepared at the mansion, about the piano lessons Victoria was already planning, about the Sunday mornings that would be dedicated to listening to old vinyl as a family. You know what's funny? Marcus reflected, sitting on the edge of the hospital bed. When I lost my memories of that night in Los Angeles, I thought I had lost something precious and irreplaceable. But looking at the two of you now, I realize that night was just the beginning of something much bigger. Sometimes we need to lose something to find something even more special, Savannah replied softly, adjusting James in her arms as he shifted restlessly. We didn't lose anything, Marcus corrected, leaning down to kiss his son's forehead and then his wife's lips. We just took a different path to get to exactly where we were supposed to be. The soft sound of James's breathing filled the silence that followed, a perfect melody for the beginning of this new chapter of their lives. Outside, Manhattan shone beneath the night sky, its lights dancing like earthly stars, silent witnesses to yet another love story that, against all odds, found its way home.